After a decade of marriage, a woman named Amora was confronted with a truth that shattered everything she had believed to be true about her relationship. Her husband, James, the man she had loved and trusted for 10 long years, had not been the faithful partner she had assumed him to be. The life they had carefully built together, filled with promises, dreams, and shared experiences, now felt like it was based on a foundation of deceit. As the truth slowly unraveled before her eyes, Amora found herself caught in a storm of heartbreak, loss, and the painful journey of self-discovery. Amora and James had met when they were still in their early 20s, both full of youthful optimism and dreams of the future. From the moment they crossed paths, there had been an undeniable, magnetic connection. Amora was captivated by James's charm, his quick wit, and his ambitious drive, while James was drawn to Amora's warmth, her kindness, and the way she seemed to light up any room she entered. It didn't take long before their friendship blossomed into a deep love. Their relationship progressed quickly, and within a year, they were married. To Amora, James wasn't just a partner, he was her world, her safe haven, her confidant. Together, they dreamed of a future filled with success, happiness, and the simple joys of life. They settled into a cozy house, and for a decade, they built a life that seemed picture-perfect, or so Amora thought. As time went on, their lives became a comforting routine. Amora found fulfillment in her career as a teacher. Every day, she poured her heart into helping young minds grow, nurturing their curiosity, and celebrating their small victories. She found a deep sense of purpose in her work, often bringing home stories of her students' achievements and the laughter that filled her classroom. In the evenings, she would come home, kiss James, and settle into the warmth of their shared life. James, on the other hand, had built a successful career as a businessman. His job required frequent travel, taking him to various cities and places for meetings, client presentations, and business negotiations. Amora admired his drive and ambition, knowing that his work was the backbone of the comfortable life they had together. She never questioned his need to travel, as he would often return with small tokens of his affection, a beautiful scarf, a box of chocolates, or a book to add to her collection of literary treasures. Each time he returned from one of his trips, he would regale her with stories of his adventures, the people he had met, and the strange and interesting places he had visited. Amora listened intently, imagining the world beyond their small home, as James painted vivid pictures with his words. There were moments, however, when Amora found herself questioning the rhythm of their life. It wasn't anything overt, just small, almost imperceptible shifts that made her pause. On some evenings, when they were together, James would seem distant, his mind lost in thought, as if somewhere far away. Occasionally, he would take late-night phone calls, stepping outside to speak in private, leaving Amora to wonder who was on the other end of the line. When she asked him about these strange moments, he would smile reassuringly and assure her it was nothing to worry about, just work, he would say, trusting her husband completely. Amora dismissed these fleeting doubts as the product of her own overactive imagination. After all, James had always been loving, devoted, and caring toward her. Why would she suspect anything else? But, unbeknownst to her, James's frequent business trips were not always as innocent as they appeared. Beneath his polished demeanor and smooth reassurances, there existed a hidden life, one that Amora would soon discover, and one that would shake the very foundation of her trust in him. It was on a quiet evening, as the soft glow of the setting sun filtered through their bedroom window, that Amora's life took a sudden and unexpected turn. She had decided to tackle the task of tidying up their closet. She had always found peace in organizing, in sorting through the clutter and putting things in order. James was away on another one of his business trips, so it seemed like the perfect time to clean out the space they shared. As she moved clothes around, folding and placing items in their proper places, she came across something unusual, a small, dusty box, tucked away at the very back of the closet, hidden under a pile of clothes she hadn't seen in years. The box was simple and unremarkable, a dark wooden box with a tiny, silver lock on it. Amora didn't recognize it. She had never seen this box before, and she couldn't understand why James would keep something so carefully hidden away. Curiosity piqued. She gently picked up the box, feeling its weight in her hands. What could it contain? She searched her memory, trying to recall if James had ever mentioned it, but no memory came to mind. The box felt strangely significant, as though it contained something important or perhaps something dangerous. A mix of excitement and unease surged within her, urging her to open it. But Amora hesitated. She and James had always been completely open with one another, never keeping secrets. They had built their life on trust, on the belief that nothing could come between them. Yet here, in her hands, was a locked box, hidden away like something precious or forbidden. She tried to push the thought aside, convincing herself that it was probably just an old keepsake, something James had forgotten about or simply never mentioned. But the feeling of unease lingered, and the need to understand what was inside the box grew stronger. With trembling hands, she ran her fingers over the lock, contemplating whether she should open it. The trust that had once defined their relationship now seemed fragile, like a thread that could snap at any moment. What if the contents of the box revealed a truth she wasn't ready to face? What if the life she thought she knew was not what it seemed? As Amora stood there, holding the box in her hands, she realized that this moment would change everything. The mystery it held was about to unfold, and in doing so, it would tear apart the very world she had believed to be unshakable. Amora stared at the lock, her mind spinning in turmoil as her fingers twitched, almost as if they had a mind of their own, eager to break the seal of the mysterious box. For a brief moment, she considered the possibility that there might be a hidden key tucked away somewhere, perhaps in his desk drawer, or even in his nightstand. But then she dismissed the thought with a sharp shake of her head. The idea of invading his privacy gnawing at her conscience, prying into his personal belongings could only stir up trouble. She reminded herself, trouble that wasn't even necessary. With a sigh, she carefully replaced the box where she had found it, draping the clothes over it once more to conceal its presence. As she closed the closet door behind her, she tried to push the gnawing thought of the box from her mind, reminding herself of the love, trust, and companionship they had shared over the years. Whatever was hidden inside that box, it was his, and if it truly mattered, he would share it with her when he was ready. Yet, despite her reassurances, a quiet unease lingered in the back of her mind, like a whisper that refused to be ignored. Days passed, but the curiosity that the box had stirred in her remained. One night, when James was away on a business trip, Amora found herself alone in the stillness of their home. She tried to distract herself, filling her time with mundane tasks, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the locked box. The sense of unease that had quietly simmered in her subconscious now felt like a heavy, undeniable pull. Compelled by a need to understand, she made her way back to the closet, the faint creak of the floorboards echoing in the silence. Her hands trembled as she retrieved the box once again, her heart pounding in her chest. This time, she couldn't resist the urge any longer. She had to know what was inside. After a moment of frantic searching, she found the small key that would unlock the mystery. With a quick turn, the lock clicked open, sending a shiver of both anticipation and fear coursing through her veins. The days that followed were clouded by a growing sense of obsession. James was gone again, this time for an extended business trip, and Amora could think of nothing else but the secrets that box held. Her curiosity, once a quiet murmur in the back of her mind, now roared like a storm, drowning out all reason. She knew, deep down, that she should leave things alone, that some questions were better left unanswered. But in that moment, standing alone in their bedroom, she felt the weight of her doubts and fears pressing down on her. Against her better judgment, she went to the closet once more, her pulse quickening with each step as she retrieved the box and placed it on the bed. Her hands shook as she picked up a paperclip from the nightstand and began to work it into the tiny lock. Took several attempts, but finally, with a soft click, the lock gave way. With a shaky breath, she lifted the lid, bracing herself for whatever she might find. Inside the box, a world of hidden secrets was laid bare before her. Stacks of documents, photographs, and letters spilled out, each one holding pieces of a life she hadn't known existed. Her hands trembled as she picked up the first letter, the elegant handwriting immediately drawing her in. The letter was filled with words of love, promises of a future together, words that had once been her own. But as she read on, her heart sank. The letter was addressed to a woman she had never heard of, a woman whose name sent a cold shiver down her spine. Her fingers fumbled as she reached for another letter, this one also filled with the same familiar sentiments, but once again addressed to someone else. And then another, and another. Each letter she read chipped away at the foundation of trust she had built with James, revealing a side of him she had never known, a side that had been hidden from her for years. The confusion and betrayal that twisted in her chest were unbearable, but they only deepened as she began to sift through the photographs. Each image painted a picture of a man she no longer recognized, James, smiling, his arm around yet another woman, each one looking just as happy, just as in love as she had once been. There he was, holding hands with one woman in front of a gleaming city skyline, laughing with another at a family gathering, and posing with a third by the ocean, both of them wearing wedding bands. With every new photograph, the truth became more and more undeniable. This wasn't a simple affair. It was something far worse. James wasn't just involved with other women. He had been living a lie. He had multiple wives, each one living in a different city, each one unaware of the others. The realization hit Amora like a punch to the gut. James had been leading not one life, but several, playing the role of a loving husband to multiple women, hiding behind a carefully constructed web of lies. How had she not seen the signs? How had she been so blind? As the weight of the betrayal sank in, her world seemed to collapse around her. The man she had loved, the man she had trusted with her heart and soul, had shattered everything they had built. The love she thought was real, the connection they had shared, now felt like a distant, cruel illusion. In the days that followed, Amora found herself caught in a fog of disbelief and sorrow. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't escape the flood of images and words that filled her mind. She replayed every moment, searching for signs she had missed, wondering if the love they had shared had ever been real. Was she merely a pawn in his game of deceit? Another woman he had manipulated into believing in his lies? The weight of betrayal consumed her, leaving her feeling hollow, as though her very identity had been torn away. When James finally returned home, he was greeted not with the warmth and affection he expected, but with a cold, silent reception. Amora stood in the living room, her arms crossed over her chest, her face a mask of unreadable emotion. There was no smile, no welcoming hug. The air between them was thick with tension, and James could feel it the moment he walked through the door. He took a cautious step toward her, his voice hesitant as he asked, "Amora?" But instead of responding with her usual warmth, Amora held up the stack of letters and photographs, the damning evidence she had uncovered. Her eyes locked onto his, unflinching, filled with a hurt and betrayal that he could not deny. "I found these, James," she said quietly, her voice steady but laced with pain. "I know everything." James's eyes widened as he took in the sight of the evidence. For a moment, he froze, his mind scrambling to find a way out, a way to explain the impossible. He tried to force a smile, shaking his head in disbelief. "Amora, this is all just a misunderstanding," he stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. He reached out, as though to comfort her, but she pulled away, holding up a photograph, one that captured him with another woman, their smiles wide, their eyes filled with the same affection he had once shown her. James' confession hung in the air like an oppressive storm cloud. His words, once full of charm and certainty, now felt lifeless and hollow. Amora stood there, her gaze unwavering as the truth unraveled before her. There was no need for her to ask any more questions. What he had just said was enough. The reality was laid bare, raw and undeniable, and there was no escaping it. James' eyes dropped to the floor, a sudden weight pressing on his chest as the enormity of his actions crushed him. He couldn't hide anymore. With a deep, resigned sigh, He finally looked up at her, his voice barely audible but heavy with regret. "Yes, it's true," he murmured, his words laced with a sorrow that did nothing to ease the sting of betrayal. I've had other wives, in different cities." Amora's heart pounded painfully in her chest as she processed his confession. Every syllable he uttered was like a jagged shard of glass, piercing her, leaving her breathless. This was the man she had trusted, the man she had loved with everything she had. And now he was telling her that all of it, every promise, every shared dream, had been built on lies. She couldn't find the words to respond. Her body trembled with the weight of her disbelief, her mind spiraling with questions that seemed too cruel to ask. "Why, James?" she finally choked out, her voice breaking under the weight of the pain that was quickly consuming her. "Why would you do this? How could you lie to me like this? After all we've been through?" James shifted uncomfortably, his mind scrambling for an explanation, something that could make sense of the impossible. "Amora, please understand. I never meant to hurt you. It wasn't like that. Each relationship, it just happened. I thought I could keep everyone happy, that I could manage everything without anyone ever finding out." He paused, but his words hung in the air, fragile and unconvincing. "I thought it would be fine. I thought I could keep the peace. Manage it," Amora repeated, her voice rising with a mixture of disbelief and anger. "Manage it like it's a business deal? You weren't just lying, James. You were living multiple lives. Lives that didn't include me. Did you even love me at all? Or was I just another part of your game?" Her voice trembled with the force of her emotions as she searched his face, desperate for any sign that what he had done could somehow be forgiven. James reached out instinctively, as if to touch her, to comfort her. But the moment he moved, Amora stepped back, her eyes cold with hurt. She could no longer let him come near her. He had taken so much from her already. "I do love you, Amora. I always have," he said, his voice strained, pleading. But even as he spoke, the words felt empty, hollow. Love was supposed to be a foundation, not a justification for deception. Amora shook her head, her eyes brimming with tears. Her heart, once full of warmth for him, had turned to stone. "Love," she whispered bitterly. "Is this what love looks like? How could you stand there, year after year, looking me in the eyes and pretending I was the only one? You knew how much I trusted you, James. You knew how much I gave. And in return, you built other lives. You betrayed me. How could I have been so blind?" Her voice cracked, and she took a step away, her soul screaming for relief. James lowered his gaze, his shoulders slumping under the crushing weight of her words. He had no answers. Nothing could explain what he had done. He could only feel the immense void of guilt and regret. Amora stood there, her chest heaving as she tried to hold herself together. But the anger and betrayal were overwhelming. The man she had shared her dreams with, the one she thought she could build a future with, had shattered everything. She took a slow, steadying breath, struggling to hold back the flood of emotions threatening to consume her. "Please, Amora," James whispered, his voice trembling with the fear of losing her. "I never wanted to lose you. I never wanted any of this to happen." But Amora's heart had already hardened. She had given him everything, her trust, her loyalty, her love, and in return, he had shattered it all. She could feel the walls she had built around herself rising higher with each word he spoke, each word that failed to repair the damage. She looked at him one last time, her eyes cold and resolute. "You already lost me, James," she said quietly, her voice final. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating, and with them, any chance of redemption seemed to slip away. Then, without another glance in his direction, she turned and walked away, leaving James standing alone, crushed under the weight of his own actions. In the silence that followed, Amora's mind swirled with questions she would never get answers to. How long had he been lying to her? What made him believe that he could live a life so tangled in deceit? Why had he chosen to marry so many women? To betray the woman who had stood by him for so long? James struggled to explain himself when she confronted him again. But his answers were vague, feeble, and far from satisfactory. He spoke of a need for companionship, for different connections, but none of his words could repair the damage. Amora had devoted herself to him, had shared her heart, her soul, and now, in the blink of an eye, everything had changed. The days that followed were a blur. Each moment was suffused with a mixture of anger, sadness, and disbelief. She couldn't even look at him without feeling sick to her stomach. His presence was a constant reminder of the betrayal she had suffered, and she could no longer bear it. She moved into a separate room, refusing to speak to him, to acknowledge the man who had been her world. The pain in her heart was like a constant ache, a weight she could not shake off. Every time she thought about what had happened, her heart ached with a sharpness that left her breathless. And yet, amidst the overwhelming sorrow, a flicker of resolve began to take root, a small, but growing seed of determination. She knew that she couldn't let this betrayal define her life. She couldn't let him steal her peace, her future. She had to move forward, to reclaim what was hers. Amora reached out to her close friend, Bae, for support. Bae listened quietly, offering a comforting presence, reminding her of the strength that lay within her. "Take your time," Bae advised gently. "Think about what you want. You don't need to rush into any decisions." Amora appreciated her friend's words, but she knew that the ultimate decision was hers to make. The world she had built with James had been shattered, but she still had the power to rebuild. She just had to decide what her future would look like. And no matter how painful the journey ahead might be, she was determined to find her way, to emerge stronger from the ashes of her heartbreak. As the weeks passed, Amora felt the fog of uncertainty gradually lift, offering her a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in a long time. In the quiet moments of reflection, she began to confront the pieces of her life, her dreams, her passions, and the values she once held dear. With each passing day, she grew more aware of the profound truth that had always been there. Though James had betrayed her, she was still the same woman she had always been. She was strong, resilient, and capable of rebuilding a life on her own terms. She realized that her happiness didn't have to be tied to anyone else's actions or approval. It was hers to define, and no betrayal could take that away from her. As the weight of her grief slowly eased, Amora allowed herself to imagine a future beyond the pain, a future where she could rediscover her own sense of self, unburdened by the past. She could almost taste the freedom of a life filled with peace, clarity, and personal growth. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the room, Amora sat down with James for what she knew would be their final conversation. Her heart was steady, her mind resolute. She looked at him, her eyes unwavering, and told him that she had come to a profound realization. It was time for her to move on, to walk a new path, one that was her own. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of finality. James, stricken with regret, begged for her forgiveness. He promised to change, pleading for another chance, hoping that she might reconsider. But Amora had already made up her mind. She knew that staying would only bind her to a life of uncertainty, mistrust, and ongoing heartbreak. She deserved more than that. She deserved a life of authenticity and peace, one she could create independently, without the shadows of betrayal haunting her every step. With courage and a sense of purpose, Amora began the painful but necessary process of separating from James. She poured her energy into rebuilding her life, not as a woman defined by her past relationship, but as an individual ready to embrace the future. Her work became her sanctuary, a place where she found purpose and solace. As a teacher, she reveled in the opportunity to guide her students, helping them discover their potential and grow in ways she had once believed impossible for herself. Her friends and family became her unwavering support system, offering love, understanding, and encouragement. Slowly, with each passing day, Amora began to feel a resurgence of strength, a quiet, growing hope that she was more than the sum of her wounds. Despite her progress, Amora's journey wasn't always smooth. There were days when the weight of her past threatened to pull her under. Memories of her marriage resurfaced unexpectedly, often bringing waves of sadness, doubt, and a deep sense of loss. But each time the past crept back in, Amora reminded herself of how far she had come. She could see the distance she had traveled, the strength she had cultivated, and the woman she was becoming. She learned to embrace her pain, not as something to be ashamed of, but as a testament to her resilience. Slowly, she replaced the lingering sorrow with gratitude for the life she was rebuilding, one step at a time. In her newfound freedom, Amora took time to reflect on the lessons she had learned. Despite the betrayal that had fractured her world, she had grown in ways she hadn't imagined. She had discovered a depth of resilience within herself that surprised even her. She had learned to stand tall in the face of adversity, to trust herself in her instincts, and to believe in her own inner strength. These were lessons that would carry her through the rest of her life, no matter what challenges lay ahead. One day, as she was scrolling through social media, Amora came across an invitation to a support group for women who had experienced similar betrayals. She felt an inexplicable pull, an instinct telling her this could be an opportunity for healing. With some hesitation, she decided to attend the next meeting, hoping to find solace and connection in the shared stories of other women who had walked a path similar to her own. The group quickly became a safe haven, a space where Amora could open up, share her own journey, and listen to the experiences of others. She was comforted by the realization that she wasn't alone, that there were others who truly understood her pain and her struggle. Through the support group, Amora began to rediscover her sense of purpose. The more she listened, the more she felt compelled to give back. She started offering encouragement to the other women, sharing her story of healing, and helping them navigate their own journeys. Her words became a source of hope for others, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, healing was possible. She found herself not only receiving support but also giving it, becoming a pillar of strength for those around her. It was in helping others find their way that Amora truly understood the depth of her own transformation. The experiences that once defined her pain now served as the foundation for her growth and ability to uplift others. Amora's life continued to evolve, each day bringing new opportunities for healing, growth, and happiness. She had learned to embrace her own journey, to trust in the process, and to believe that even after betrayal, there was still beauty to be found in the world. She was not the same woman who had once been lost in grief. She was stronger, wiser, and more determined to create a future that was entirely her own. And with each new step, she knew she was on the path to becoming the woman she was always meant to be. Amora found herself smiling more often, laughing with a newfound joy, and approaching life with a spirit that had been rekindled. The weight of her past, which had once burdened her soul, no longer felt like an anchor holding her down. Instead, she embraced each new day with a sense of liberation, a freedom she hadn't known in years. She was no longer a prisoner to her memories. The past no longer defined her. In its place, a deep sense of peace and possibility began to bloom, and she stood at the threshold of a future filled with potential, ready to embrace whatever came her way. One sunny afternoon, as if life had a way of guiding her toward the good she deserved, Amora met a man named Tund. He was kind-hearted and exuded a calm warmth that immediately put her at ease. Their first conversation was easy, natural, and filled with laughter, a welcome change from the heaviness she had carried for so long. As time went by, their connection grew from a simple friendship into something far deeper, something Amora had not expected but was beginning to crave. Tund was not just supportive and understanding, he was patient, a true listener who took the time to understand the layers of her heart. His gentleness reminded her that not all men were the same, that kindness could still be found in this world. First, Amora was cautious. Her heart had been through much, and she wasn't eager to risk it again. But with Tund, she felt something different, a sense of safety, a trust that felt natural, not forced. It was as if he had an unspoken understanding of her past struggles, and instead of pushing her to move faster than she was ready, he walked beside her every step of the way. Their bond grew organically, with each day feeling like a small victory, a reassurance that healing was possible. As her relationship with Tund blossomed, Amora began to rediscover the warmth of love. For the first time in years, she felt seen, valued, and respected for who she truly was. It was a love that was not defined by expectations or past scars, but rather by an honest and unpretentious connection. With Tund, there was no need to pretend, no pressure to be anything other than herself. For the first time, Amora understood that love didn't have to hurt. It could be gentle, nurturing, and healing. Her journey of healing was far from complete, but with each passing day, Amora found that her heart was mending, little by little. She was no longer defined by the wounds of her past. Tund's patience became a balm for her soul, a steady reminder that not all relationships were built on pain or fear. He never rushed her, never tried to mold her into something she wasn't. Instead, he allowed her to take her time, to unfold at her own pace. His unwavering support was the foundation on which she began to rebuild the pieces of herself that had once been shattered. There were moments when she would catch herself in quiet reflection, feeling a warmth and sense of safety she hadn't known in years. And she realized that this was real. This was the kind of love she had been waiting for. Tund not only supported her in love, but in her ambitions as well. He encouraged Amora to chase her dreams, to embrace the passion she had put on hold for so long. One of her greatest desires had always been to help women who had suffered from painful relationships. Much like she had, Amora had started a small support group, and with Tund's gentle encouragement, she expanded her efforts, reaching out to more women who needed a lifeline. His belief in her abilities gave her the courage to push forward, to share her story and offer hope to others. Through her healing, Amora discovered a profound purpose, one that was not only about her recovery, but about uplifting others along the way. She had walked through darkness and emerged stronger, and now, she wanted to show other women that they, too, could overcome. Tund's quiet encouragement, his faith in her work, and his constant support were the pillars that allowed her to expand her reach and touch even more lives. She wanted these women to see that healing was possible, that joy and love could be reclaimed, even after the deepest of wounds. It wasn't long before Amora realized that her true calling was not only to heal, but to help others heal as well. The pain and betrayal of her past had shaped her, yes, but it had also made her wiser, more compassionate, and more determined to make a difference. She had endured, and now, with Tund by her side, she was poised to embrace the future with hope, confidence, and a renewed sense of purpose. She had found love again, but more importantly, she had found herself stronger, braver, and more capable of facing whatever life threw her way. Her journey had been a long and tumultuous one, filled with heartbreak, moments of doubt, and the slow, often painful process of healing. But now, standing on the other side of her struggles, Amora was a different woman. She was not just a survivor but a thriving woman who had reclaimed her life, her power, and her sense of purpose. With Tund beside her, she knew that the future was bright, filled with endless possibilities, and she was ready to walk into it, head held high, heart full of gratitude and hope.